Hello. Um, Today we're dragging out the Mujica and MyGO videos I can make by doing some hot takes, talking about some hot controversial takes. What is any take that people feel quite strongly about either way? Can be positive or negative, just anything like that. I put out a tweet, I'll put it on the screen somewhere, future me will hopefully do that as well as all the other replies. I put out a tweet asking for most controversial hot takes regarding Mujica, MyGO, be it the music, the anime, the game, whatever, anything to do with them, those two as bands. And we got a whole bunch of replies to talk about and get into. I'm not really here to kind of disprove any takes or like shut them down or be aggressive towards them or anything like that. I just want to discuss them and just see where we go from it. Just I don't want anything crazy, but yeah, we got quite a few takes to get through. I've grouped some of the replies together because a lot of them are somewhat similar, and I don't want to end up repeating myself or just talking about the same points over and over again. But yeah. So firstly, we have for private accounts, I'm obviously gonna not show the app. For public accounts, you'll see who replied. So firstly, we have the writers don't know what to do with Taki post MyGO. There's no way we're this many episodes in and we don't have a view on the Kreischick breakup. We got Rika's perspective on it first, and she wasn't even in Kreischick. And yeah, Taki is a weird one because obviously in MyGO we had focus of Taki, but it was never that substantial and never really got deep into her character. Obviously you can watch my video on Taki and all the subtle things that people might have missed, but the story hasn't focused on her really. I mean, the most focus she got was obviously that episode 6 and then the Breathing Next to You event in the game. And a lot of people, including myself, were expecting Taki to get some sort of focus in Mujica, and she didn't in the end. So now I guess we're waiting on season 3 for that. I'd be surprised if we don't get it in season 3. It's something that can be explored alongside Umiri, but I do understand this take for sure. That I don't think it's to say they don't know what they're doing with her, but more so they've sidelined her, and it's a shame. We do know that she cares for Kreischick deeply. We see it in the manga. We saw it in Mujica, but we haven't really got any sort of introspectiveness from her side regarding the breakup. I mean, even aside from Kreischick stuff, just her in general, a lot of her character you kind of have to infer based on small things and just make inferences based on like stuff like that, and you don't have a really solid grasp of her character. I still think she's an amazing character despite all that, but it is a shame that we haven't got proper Taki focus. I mean, we haven't even seen her sister. We don't know how she met Umiri. We don't know, like, obviously they met in school, but we don't know how the interaction went down. I mentioned before that how did it even go, especially those two type of characters. But yeah, I think Taki's an interesting spot because there's a lot of room to explore with it, and it'll be disappointing if we don't get more stuff with her in the sequel. But I mean, this is a pretty fair take, I'd say. This is I wouldn't go as hard as say they don't know what they're doing with her, because I do have full faith in the team and their vision and what they're going for, but she has been sidelined, and I think it's a bit unfair for her in general, especially compared to other characters. You compare like the screen time and the relevancy for all the other characters, and she does kind of shade in comparison. But let's move on to the next one, and this is about mana. Surprisingly, we have they need to stop neglecting my poor girl mana, and another post from Ren, who posts a lot about MyGo and Mana in general, and Mujica. Go follow them, great account. There's a part of me that wish Mana had a teeny tiny bit more plot relevance, or just presence in Animuj. She appeared in the website's character page, so I was hoping she'd be more important. Her relationship with Riko would have been super interesting to explore, for example. Thankfully, there's been a bit of it in the manuscript as a manga, which I loved. Maybe we can get more of it in season 3. And yeah, I agree. I would like to see more of her, and I think her relationship with Riko is something that needs to be explored a bit, given how few relationships Rika has. And it's clear that Sumimi and Mana herself is an important part of Rika's life. That's not up for debate. That it's a huge part of her life, whether she enjoys it or not, whether it's sort of like a place she can kind of relax or not is another thing, but it's a huge part of Rika's character and the narrative for her. So it would be nice to explore more of her with Mana, and I was expecting more of Mana in the sequel as well, given how close she is with Rika. But I mean, I do understand her not getting much focus. I mean, if we compare it to someone like Taki, for example, people are much less going to be interested in Mana. But I think it could be a possibility and could be cool if going forward something happens with Sumimi, something happens with Hatsune and her secret coming out, that causes conflict, causes drama. Mana would be involved in that. But yeah, I do hope we see more of her, because I mean, her presence every time she's on screen is really nice. She seems like a bubbly character, like Tanda Hazuki, a voice actor. She performs her amazingly in the joint live. But yeah, I agree with this. It's not something I feel that kind of passionately about, but I'd be more than happy to see more of Mana in season 3 or the game. I don't think we'll see her in the game, but it would just be. I think it would be nice, and I think it wouldn't be something that would just be forced in the narrative or shoehorned in just for the sake of it, or the sake of having Tanda Hazuki have a bigger role. Because of, like I said, her relevance to Rika, her relevance to. I mean, it is just her relevance to Rika, but given, like I said, how little of relationships and dynamics Rika has outside of Sakiko, Mana is like already up there as one of the most important ones. So it would be great if that is explored more. And next we have kind of a couple, I put 3 in this kind of group, and it's kind of about Mujica as a whole, especially the final kind of segment of it. I honestly feel like Mujica would have benefited if there were more episodes. I don't mind the subtlety and nuances sprinkled throughout, but I just wanted to see more of the other members due to how layered their relationships are with one another. And similarly, we have MyGo is a better season overall, with a better band, dynamic, pacing and script. Mujica's Mutsumi arc that to episode 2 to episode 10 was the best thing in the series alongside Tomori's arc, but 11 to 12 were the weakest eps in MyGo, bar none. The incest are not a reason why, they're just rushed and explored clumsily. And between the 3 to 4 MyGo protagonists, Tomori, Sakiko, Soyo and Anon included if you count as a protagonist as well, Sakiko is the least compelling by far, and more often than not overshadowed by Mutsumi or Mortis, even though she's still really good. And then I think MyGo Season 1 is better than Mujica Season 1. To begin with, I don't think it's that much of a hot take for MyGo to be better than Mujica. I mean, you look on the tracking websites like AniList or MyAnimeList, and MyGo has a better score than Mujica, even if it is just marginally. But I mean, you look at China's kind of tracking list, and Mujica really tanked over there. In general, I think MyGo has a bit more general appeal than Mujica. I think Mujica is the kind of thing that you're either super into or you're just not feeling it, and it kind of will put people on either end of the spectrum, whereas MyGo, you can kind of feel just good about it. I've had a lot of friends and mutuals on Twitter who have watched MyGo and thought, yeah, this is just good. I'm not that invested in it, but this is a good show. I feel like with Mujica, you don't get that as much. You either get this is kind of the best thing ever, or this just didn't work for me at all. Regarding the pacing and that kind of thing, MyGO definitely much more tighter and well paced, I'd say. I think I'm not sure if I would like to see more episodes now in Mujica. I'm feeling maybe one more. But then again, I'm like I don't know how that would go, because I think Mujica episodes 1 to 7 are near perfect pacing wise. I think maybe an extra half episode or an extra episode, but even then I don't think that you want to drag out the Kreischick stuff even more. Episode 1 to 4, perfect pacing. The Kreischick stuff, I'm hesitant on maybe wanting a little bit more build up, but I think that was fine. That isn't something I'm only gonna linger on at all. I think that's fine. Even episodes 8 to 9 after that are good, are fine pacing wise. And obviously things get a bit messy 10 to 13. You obviously get 10, a fast paced kind of reunion. It is meant to feel like that. It's meant to feel a rushed kind of disjointed reunion, especially compared to MyGO 10. 11, you get Eureka's backstory. All just the entire episode just focused on Eureka solely herself, and then 12 you get the reconciliation between Eureka and Takiko. And again, it's kind of a thing of, and obviously 13 is the concert. A lot of people were kind of not disappointed with 13, but expecting not just a full-on concert. I mean, I wasn't expecting that for sure. Even with the episode previews, I thought we would get just something else alongside the concert, but we didn't. And I think, Mutsumi's arc for sure is a highlight in the series. It is one of the more focused arcs. It is given all the time it was needed. I disagree completely about Sakiko being not very compelling. I think Sakiko's arc is incredibly compelling, and I mean, to me, Sakiko's arc is about as perfect as it gets in the show overall, alongside Tomori's. I don't think she's really overshadowed. I think her role in the story is perfectly placed, especially in those kind of episodes 5 to... I mean, I'll be seeing her in another Mujica like 1 to 4, where she's losing control of everything and everything's kind of slipping out of her grasp. She's kind of grappling for control with Mortis and Yamu and all those kind of things, and then we get just her collapse in post episode 4 and episode 5, and into 7 we get she's allowed to reconcile with Kreischick, and then she kind of takes a little bit of a backseat for a couple of episodes. She tries to get Kreischick back together, but she's not as active in the story, I'd say. She's not making as many moves, and then everything all of a sudden she's forced into playing her hand in episode 10, which isn't a hand even she wanted to play. And then I think that the main thing is that she in episodes, her main conclusion, so to say, is in episode 12, and that episode is fast paced. It is, I don't want to say rushed, because I don't think it's rushed at all. But it can be jarring. I can understand why it would feel off to some people, but I think there's obviously intent in that. I don't need to go over how clearly they've kind of displayed the intent that they are aware that they're sweeping things under the rug, and that all this happens very quickly, because it is the same for the characters. It's not something that has been resolved. It's been resolved, basically, like in quotation marks, and it's something that will come back at some point, and maybe we'll look back on those episodes. I mean, I think those episodes are the best in the series, 11 to 12. Those two are some of the best, alongside MyGO 3 and 10. But maybe we'll look back after season 3 and those episodes will be even better, but you never know. But I disagree completely that the weakest eps in MyGO 11 to 12, I think they are the best episodes in Ave Mujica, possibly the best in the series. And regarding the pacing overall, like I said, there's a part of me that thinks it could do with a few more episodes. Not even a few more. I think just one more. But then there's a part of me that I think it would affect the pacing negatively if we had an extra episode in there somewhere. Because I don't really know where it could go that it would benefit. And I feel like the story is split quite nicely into parts, even if they can feel a bit disconnected from each other at times. But yeah, I think I don't think MyGO being better overall is a hot take at all. I think that is popular opinion, I'd say, in general. From what I've seen anyway, even though most of the people like close to me do prefer Mujica, I know in the wider community MyGO is preferred for a whole host of reasons. Personally, I prefer Mujica a tiny bit, and that is only because of Mujica's bold narrative decisions and how much more striking it is visually and how much more focused it is visually. I think it really finds itself in that department. Not to say that MyGO is bad visually, because it's not at all, but Mujica has a really strong aesthetic and strong visual identity compared to MyGO. And that does set it apart for me, those two things. So yeah, interesting one that I think about the pacing, because I've seen a lot of people complain about that, and I think Sakiko as a character is a one that is kind of a bit hit or miss. You'll either kind of really, really get her arc, given how it's executed and how all of a sudden it does just kind of conclude, and you're like, oh, that is it, and you're like, wait, that isn't it, but it is it. And a lot of things regarding characters is kind of hard to talk about, given that we are getting more. We're getting a whole other season. We don't know what that kind of thing would entail. So to even say that these are the conclusions is probably wrong. But for now, it's all we got to go off. So. And similarly with that, I didn't mention this one, but another private account said, I don't know what the sequel has in store, but Mujica had crazy untouched potential after episode 11, and that is again a part of the pacing and part of having everything resolved in the next episode. And I know the person who replied this is a big fan of Umineko, and I assume, I mean, I don't assume, I know that there are narrative similarities, and I'm sure that Umineko would handle those things with much more depth and brevity, I suppose, given Umineko as a medium. It has the time to do that compared to Mujica. And I definitely understand that kind of take of Mujica having untapped and untouched potential after episode 11 with the whole drama between Wika, Sakiko and the Togawas. But I also think it did take itself in its own bold direction with what it did, and for that I appreciate that more than anything they could have done otherwise, I think. But yeah, it's definitely something to think about. And then we have a take from Alazir, who luckily I got to rewatch Mujica with. It was really good fun experiencing his reaction to some of the things. He was watching it for the first time and I was rewatching it. Fans getting into MyGO now honestly aren't getting the full experience that the wait and build up to Ave brought. Like, I cannot imagine going straight from MyGO 13 to Ave 1 with no wait, no analysis on stage players or the masks or the dolls as characters in their own right. And yeah, I completely agree with this. It's a completely different experience, and it's one thing to say that the stage plays and the music, the whole aesthetic of music and all that complement the show, but it's more that they're completely intertwined with the show. I mean, the stage plays have the relevance they have. Even before watching Mujica is huge, and I mean, I was one of the people that was kind of pushing people to read those and kind of get on them before Mujica. I mean, the whole build-up and hype to Mujica was huge. I mean, I finished watching MyGO shortly after it finished airing, so I've been a part of it the whole time, and I mean, the theories and everything, and I agree that I can't really imagine just finishing MyGO 13 going straight into Mujica 1 because of the whole mystery and the build up and not knowing what Sakiko's secret was and her backstory and Wika's deal, all that. It's just a whole different build up, and like it is a different experience, and I don't want to say they aren't getting the full experience, because that is something that it's hard to kind of, obviously it's something that is just kind of, that experience, it just has happened in time, and you can't, that's not something that can be replicated in obviously ever with that, because it's its own thing that's happened. It's not something that they can kind of copy again, but it is a completely different experience, that's for sure. And I mean, like I said, if you were part of the community before Mujica aired, you'll know the amount of theories running rampant, that every new song, every new concert, every new visual, every new PV, everything was analysed and overanalyzed and just talked about to absolutely no end. If you were a part of that, it was a brilliant experience, and being that build up, and obviously anticipating yourself for the anime. I think the community was in a better spot as well before the anime aired. I'm not particularly sure why that is, but I don't know, I feel like the community was a bit more accepting of things in general. I don't really know how to put it, but there was a kind of a better air to the community before the anime aired. I mean, I know a lot of people did end up hopping on it while the anime was airing. There was given all the hype around it, given the promotions from other YouTubers like Giguk, and they've done an incredible job promoting it, so that it has, the entire show has garnered a whole lot more fans since MyGO ended. But yeah, I completely agree that it's a completely different experience. That whole build up, that entire year and a half almost of waiting for Mujica, and I'm so glad I was a part of it, to be honest. And not to say I feel bad if you missed out on it, but it really did add to my experience with the show and my experience interacting with the community and everything like that. But yeah. And next we have a take from Curie. I hate that Takitomo is not as popular as it should be, mostly due to the fandom just hating it or not understanding Taki for whatever reason. And yeah, I completely agree. I got a whole video on Taki that I will plug whenever I can. Go watch that if you want more stuff about me talking about Takitomo. But it is surprising to see their relationship not get the love it deserves in the fandom, because I feel like if it was maybe in any other entry that wasn't my Mujica MyGO related, it would be one of the most popular ships in the franchise. But I suppose maybe it's overshadowed by certain other ships. Obviously, Tomosaki is huge. Umiri Taki is probably bigger as well. Obviously, even like Tomori and Anon is probably bigger than Takitomo, which I don't really ship them romantically, but I think a large portion of it is a lack of understanding and a lack of appreciation for the depth that ship has, because a lot of people kind of see it on a surface level, either as this really kind of cutesy ship that doesn't have much interesting going on writing wise in it, or they interpret it really kind of negatively, and that Taki is kind of harming Tomori with her love and holding her back, and that Taki kind of treats Tomori badly with her love, and it's just not really true. There's a middle ground to their relationship. It's not one way or another. I know people love to kind of just force people on the sides of this thing, but there is nuance in their relationship, and it's nowhere near as appreciated as a lot of the other character relationships are. And it's a shame, because they're really great, and I can't stress enough how interesting their relationship actually is, even in a show that has a whole host of fantastic and interesting dynamics. But Takitomo, I mean, it was the one that, the kind of ship that really caught my eye initially when I first watched the show. And again, with a lot of these kind of takes, is that I feel like it certainly, the rewatches of the show would really kind of benefit a lot of people. And it's not to say that, oh, you didn't understand it or that kind of thing, or kind of, I don't want to be condescending like that, but it's a show that benefits absolutely massively off of a rewatch, and kind of nuances to Takitomo's relationship, you'll pick up more on those. You'll pick up more on kind of character quirks and their relationships and their kind of habits in general on a rewatch, and you'll notice certain things obviously that you'd missed before, having context for the future as well. It recontextualizes certain things. Like, I think for me, MyGO was been probably the show with the most rewatch value and the most rewarding rewatch that I've experienced. I mean, I love things like Attack on Titan that has that kind of quality to it as well. But I agree. It is a shame that Takitomo is not as popular as it probably should be. And you're right. They're hating on it because they don't really understand Taki in particular, or they kind of favour Tomri more in as characters, so they might just see Taki more as someone that they might be more interested in Tomri, so they don't really make an effort to understand Taki as much. But yeah, I agree. It's a shame. Takitomo are great, and they should be more appreciated in the fandom. Next, we have a take from Bearic, who does great MyGO art and art in general. Go follow them. Check out their art. Awesome person. I kind of want Hatsune's secret to not be kept for long during the sequel. I'd like to see more of the real Hatsune, especially interacting with other characters rather than the Hatsune who masquerades as weaker. Outside of Sakiko, it shouldn't matter much to them since they only know of Hatsune, but I think it could possibly shake up some dynamics if Hatsune added much differently. And yeah, that's an interesting one. Personally, I'm not sure I'm not too bothered whether the secret kind of stays as it is or gets out in the open somehow. But knowing that there's a season 3, knowing there's a sequel, I feel like the conflict might inevitably go in that direction of Rika's secret coming out and the consequences that entails. It would allow mana to be brought in, like I mentioned earlier. It would allow the original Rika to be brought in. It would allow the Togawas to become relevant again, and I think all that can be good things if handled correctly. But like I said, I'm not that bothered whether it gets kind of revealed or not to the others. I think it would be interesting to see. I'm just going to call it Wika for now. It would be interesting Wika kind of just freed from that altogether. And I think that it's kind of a whole thing with Mujica, that they are hiding secrets, they are hiding things from each other, and they are purposefully sweeping them under the rug. So if they do go down the direction of taking that down and taking apart this manufactured paradise they've built, I feel like inevitably Wika's secret would be her whole, that would be her arc essentially. And God, it would be incredible to see how that would play out. Like you said, interacting with other characters, what people feel about it, how would like Tomori feel about it. Like, I mean, obviously Tomori's not going to care as much, but it's such a huge deal. It would kind of shake up the entire show. And the more I think about it, the more I'm like, that is almost, not certainly, but I feel like that is surely the direction they're probably going to take the sequel. But at the same time, I think it would be interesting for it just to be kept under wraps the whole time, and it just be something between Sakiko and Rika. But like I said, I don't feel too strongly about it either way. But as long as it's handled appropriately and executed appropriately, I don't really want I don't know how to word this. I don't really want it to really. I think because by having Weaker's Secret come out, it kind of would redefine her entire character and how she acts, and I feel like there's a lot of ways the show could go wrong with that or mess that up in different ways. I mean, it would also mean the other characters would have to address. I mean, there's generally so much they'd have to address with that kind of thing, given the music, the romantic implications between Sakiko and Wika. Obviously, Wika's lyrics to Sakiko. The members, they kind of have to be aware. Nyamu especially, I'm sure, is aware of that. So how do they address the kind of incestuous aspects of that and the toxic aspects of their relationship? Like how it would be such a huge thing to address and to reveal to the cast and everyone in that sense that it would need a whole season to do that, which we're getting. So I mean, the chances are definitely not zero that this happens. I think there's a strong chance this happens, but like I said, it's all about execution. I do trust the team. I do trust them. I know things have shaken up a bit since the original MyGo, but yeah, I think there's a lot of potential with that. Whether they keep it under wraps or whether it all comes out, there's a sure potential for interesting things to be done either way. And next we have, I think that MyGo has fake chemistry, while Mujica doesn't have chemistry as a band, but doesn't need to have one. And I definitely agree with the latter. Mujica does lack kind of any sort of chemistry as a band, or those kind of typical band interactions we expect from a band or a band. And you're right, they don't need to have one. That is kind of the whole point, is that they are completely just mismatched individuals, disjointed, but Takiko is determined to bring them together and keep them together. It works. It can only work like that because they are Mujica. I think saying MyGo has fake chemistry, to me is just a bit bizarre. I think there's so much chemistry between them as a band. They kind of have some of the most natural interactions in the show, in the entire series for me, and in a lot of shows I've watched in general. Like the interactions between Taki and Anon and Sawyer, those kind of three, those like bickering. You have Tomori and Anon, like Tomori and Sawyer, those kind of genuine moments between them. Tomori and Anon, who are like a very core basis for the show. Takitomo, obviously, that whole thing that a lot of people kind of, it goes over their heads. Rana has a good dynamics with Tomori and Taki in particular. I don't see it at all. I don't see how they have fake chemistry. I think on stage they have great chemistry. We saw it in the live performance in Mujica, especially the chemistry they have on stage. I don't know if you've read the band stories on the game. You get more of their chemistry. You get more of them kind of just acting as a band and it being more chill, like episode 11. I mean, that whole episode 11 kind of just showcases their chemistry really well. I think I don't know. I don't understand that fake chemistry take personally. Maybe I should have asked for you to expand on that more, but yeah, for me, nah, I agree that Mujica don't have much chemistry, but that's kind of the point. But for MyGo, I think they have a lot of chemistry. I mean, out of all the bands in the main series anime, MyGo for me have the most chemistry, I think. Poppin' Party closely followed, I'd say. Probably equal. Poppin' Party, actually, their dynamic is great chemistry wise. And next, talking about the entire franchise and the rest of the bands, we have a few takes that I've kind of grouped together here. Firstly, from Shadowflare, there are times where part of me wishes MyGo was its own thing and not part of Bandori, both so that they aren't bound to share a universe with the other bands, but also because the discourse I have seen proves that the fandom only wants the same type of content and don't want to engage in anything else outside of their comfort zone. One example is how all they only think about relationships is in a shipping context, and saying tackling certain subjects that threaten shipping is a no-no. and yet they go out of their way to insinuate Bandori tackles darker subjects, even though they have proven they cannot even stomach it when things do get dark. And kind of on a similar note, low-key MyGO girls don't need to interact that much with the wider Bandori verse. Not because I don't think that OGs are great, but because the nature of the game's storytelling format means a lot of the impact of a lot of stuff is eventually diluted, even if it's written well in the moment. And then on the other hand, we have someone saying, we need more interactions between MyGO and the OG bands, praying for new Bandori shorts to do this. And I think they're in an interesting spot. I definitely understand MyGO wanting it to be its own thing, and I know that initially that was the plan, was for them not to be involved in the Bang Dream universe. I think it was a good thing that they were, mainly because it allows for just more kind of content and that kind of thing. I think interactions between other bands are good. I mean, especially with like MyGO, you get the interactions with Hatsune and Taki with Afterglow. Even stuff like Saki being inspired from Morphonica, Leia in Mujica. It's always nice to see that kind of thing. From a kind of writing standpoint, I don't think there's a huge deal there that makes it better that they are part of the same universe. I think the Rana stuff is really good with Ona. But outside of that, there's not too much there that kind of justifies them being in the same universe and franchise as Bandori. And I definitely agree with about the Bandori fandom, obviously kind of thinking most of the time in a shipping lens and not being able to handle certain subjects. I mean, the fandom in general are, a lot of them are minors. A lot of them, the large majority of them are children, especially the Western fandom. That's for sure. That's no without a doubt. A lot of them are children, so they don't have much familiarity with these kind of themes, and just any kind of mention of certain things will immediately just kind of repulse them and put them off. So, and that kind of thing would have been avoided if they weren't attached to Bandori as a whole, because they probably might not have got involved with it. But I think regardless, I think it's important that it's good to know that they have tackled these themes and this kind of content regardless. It's good to know that they are willing to kind of go there with the girls in the show, despite them being attached to a franchise that is known for not touching upon those kind of things in the anime anyway. And so, I mean, I say in the anime anyway, there's not anything that even comes close to what happened to Rika in the game, but obviously the anime, the stories with the OG bands are much more diluted, and not as a lot of stuff is skipped and that kind of thing. But just reading it again, yeah, I completely agree that having MyGO is something that has been kind of put on a pedestal by a lot of the community to say that that it handles darker themes and more serious topics, but when it does actually get to some really serious stuff, a lot of the fandom can't handle it and are immediately kind of just automatically just put off by it and aren't willing to engage with it as sincerely and as faithfully as they would for all the stuff that's come before it, which is a shame, because I think they've kind of handled that stuff really well, and it hasn't been glorified. But I also think there's a part of Bandori or Bushiroad that may continue to kind of push them to, as you know, I mean, obviously not talking about Rika and Taiko, their incestuous relationship. There's a part of me that thinks Bushiroad could end up pushing them to as a ship more, with merch and all that kind of thing, and then it kind of gets into a bit of a dodgy territory with what were their intentions with this, and were the intentions with this whole thing genuine, and real, or was it just more for kind of an edgy shipping purpose? And given they're obviously the people at Bushiroad, they're going to be, and the writers, they're going to be completely aware of how much shipping is done in Bandori, how much they are allowed to confirm or deny ships, given the industry, given the kind of social context and social sphere of these kind of franchises and shows. There is only so far they can take it, unfortunately, and I don't want these themes that have been tackled well to be an excuse to not take it further. But regarding interactions between the other MyGO girls and the previous bands, for me, I don't feel too strongly about it either way. I think it's certainly nice to see these them interacting with older bands, and the interactions that we've gotten have felt natural and not real and not forced, which is great. But I do just hope they don't end up kind of forcing it, and forcing kind of collaborations between the bands, and forcing interactions and forcing storylines between them, because especially in the game it just probably won't work very well, and I don't want the Mujica and MyGO characters to have to be kind of watered down a bit for the sake of the OG bands. And I'm not saying that that means the OG bands are bad characters. It's just there are two very different things going on between the older stuff and the newer stuff, and pointing that out doesn't mean I don't like the older stuff. I know a lot of people will immediately kind of assume that to be the case, but no, because I do. The older stuff's fun. I enjoy them a lot, but obviously not as much as having MyGO. And given the medium the game is in, it doesn't really favour the writing of Mujica and MyGO. I mean, the MyGO version of the story is fine in the game. Obviously not as good, but Mujica, I think, is much more ambitious visually. It wouldn't translate as well over to the game. We know it seems they aren't entering the game anytime soon, which I think is a good thing for now. And I agree that even if a lot of the Mujica stuff is well written, the show especially, I think by having them interact so much with older members of the franchise, it could end up kind of taken away from the uniqueness of Mujica. And what makes Mujica so good is how kind of antithetical they are to Bandori as a whole, and the OG bands kind of I'm trying to think of the right word, but their whole kind of more positive kind of storytelling and more positive kind of approach to writing and their characters, it doesn't work with Mujica. It wouldn't work with Mujica, and I don't want interaction between older bands and Mujica to kind of make that contrast feel a bit jarring, because I think that contrast is good. It's really good to point out and think about and look at, but like you said, in the moment it might just feel wrong, and I don't want that to kind of happen to Mujica. I think I'm very happy for MyGO to get interactions with older bands. They have more of a connection with some of the older members, with the other members, than Mujica do. But for me, Mujica, I'm not that arsed about seeing them interact with older bands. For me, at most, I'd like to see Takiko with Morphonica, and that kind of. I would like to see Takiko kind of fangirl over them a bit, and maybe even like repay them for Psycho becoming so inspired by them, and essentially saving her life to a degree. But yeah, I think with MyGO, I'm happy to see them interact with older bands. With Mujica, I'm not as bothered. And there's definitely benefits for if MyGO wasn't a part of Bandori, for sure. And next we have my favourite episodes of Mujica were 7 and 11. 7 was a beautiful episode, and the brokenness of Tomori seeing Harukage just made it so perfect. Episode 11 has an interesting and bold take. A whole episode is set in one room and it's played like a theatre drama. It's so good. And yeah, there's nothing hot about this take, but I completely agree that episode 11 and 7 are highlights of the series for sure. 11 in particular, I think, is a perfect episode of anime, like without a shadow of a doubt. 7 obviously as well is, I mean, 7 is the emotional climax of the show, and they're both incredible episodes. And I think if anyone disagrees, just doesn't really like the show as much as us, I suppose, doesn't really kind of get the show as well. But yeah, those 2 episodes, without a doubt, incredible. And next we have a few takes regarding Umiri, who is for sure kind of a more controversial character in the show from the fan base perspective. So how they implied that Umiri might have an eating disorder but never explored it any further, I think Umiri fits well as a MyGO member. From what they've shown us from her backstory, she's always felt like a wandering spirit, looking for a place where she belongs. She reminds me a bit of Rana, but Rana is more of a free spirit. And how Umiri's backstory showed clear signs of autism and being misunderstood and ignored by the people around her and in the fandom. And yeah, I think I agree with pretty much all of these. I want to talk about the MyGO one first, because I think absolutely Umiri does feel like a MyGO member. Even I feel like there's a reason why she was the one that was brought in as a replacement, even if it was kind of a forced thing with Taki. But there's definitely a world where Umiri works in MyGO, and I think it's interesting because all the other characters in Mujica have kind of a much more intense deal going on. It's much more dramatized. It's much more, I guess, high stakes for the rest of the members of Mujica, their whole personal conflicts. But Umiri's for sure does fit the bill of a MyGO character more, of a MyGO drama more. And I don't like separating the shows like that, but the bands obviously are very different. But I think that's what makes her very interesting as a Mujica member, is how she doesn't fit as one. There's a contrast there with her and between the rest of the members, and we see her drop everything to become an Mujica member, even though I kind of think, personality and conflict-wise, it doesn't suit her. And I think there's an irony to that. There's meaning in that. And I know you don't kind of mean Umiri being a MyGO member, she should be a MyGO member, or that it's a bad thing, but there's definitely that kind of feel with her as a character, and I think it's interesting to think about that contrast with her and actually being an Mujica member. And then the eating disorder thing. I mean, everyone was talking about that at the time. It was a huge aspect of Umiri's character that people were expecting to be explored. I think it's something that should be explored in either the game, if they get added, or season 3. It would be a shame if it kind of just doesn't go anywhere, because it's got huge potential for her character, and knowing the show, it can handle kind of themes like this, and it can handle writing characters in this way. I think Umiri, I mean, we need more Umiri focus in general, but she definitely deserves that in particular, because it feels so intently done, the eating disorder stuff, that it would be strange for it to just be ignored for the rest of the show. So I do think if they get added in the game, it will be explored in the game. If not, it will be explored in season 3. Hopefully now, because we said this was Taki before and it's not happened. But and then the final one, Umiri's backstory, showing clear signs of autism for sure, definitely, and how she's misunderstood and ignored by people around her, and how that is also something that happens in the fandom, and it's a shame because for me, the people that kind of misunderstand and ignore her character or say that she doesn't get enough screen time or that she doesn't, or that they were disappointed by her character, it's kind of a bit of a gotcha moment. Like the text itself is kind of making fun of that, and kind of you've kind of fell for it, that she isn't important and that she is being ignored by the narrative. I feel like there's definitely things there that can be kind of interpreted in a metatextual way, which is really interesting for a character like Umiri. And it is a shame that, I mean, I think I want to say her and Yami were probably the two most unpopular characters in the show, and it's a shame because, I mean, Umiri in particular, there's so much there that is relatable. I mean, I know a lot of people that I'm close to who watch the show, and a lot of them end up coming up with Umiri as their favourite character, and I feel like she is a character that if you don't kind of understand on a personal level, it is hard to really get invested in her story and understand her character and what they were going for in general with her, because her kind of whole absence from the story, her lack of relationships, all that kind of thing, all feels very intentful, and it all feels purposeful for her, and I couldn't really imagine it any other way. I couldn't imagine her getting more interactions and meaningful character kind of moments with other members, because it just wouldn't work. There's no way it can work, because the whole thing is that she's gotten to this point without even realizing that she is completely disconnected from the band, and that she needed to make a move kind of in a panic to get the band back together, because she didn't have any sort of meaningful connection with any of them. And like I said, a lot of the fandom kind of fell for it as well by saying that she was underdeveloped or not appreciated enough. Like, you kind of fell for what the story was doing too. You've ignored a lot of her character. You've ended up misunderstanding a lot of her character, as the show has kind of directed you to, almost. But yeah, I agree with these all. I think Umiri's a fascinating character, and I really do hope we get more focus for her in the future alongside Taki. Next we have the episode 10, Mortis is fused. Episode 13, Mortis is back. Director interview, Mortis is dead. April Fools, Mortis is back. Rollercoaster of grief was unreal. I feel like the characters badly need more interaction, hoping the sequel doesn't trip on its own over-ambition. And yeah, I agree. Even though I think Mortis' arc up until that point was very cleanly and tightly done, this whole kind of portion of it felt a bit messy. And there's a part of me that's kind of like, maybe that's the point, is that this kind of reconciliation is messy. It's not as straightforward as, oh, they fused, or oh, one of them died, or like that kind of thing. It obviously, we're talking about humans here. We're talking about a personality disorder that is complicated, and it is going to be messy. But for a show like this, I feel like they had to kind of telegraph it a bit better. And to me, I think it's clear where they stand now, Mujica and Mortis, at this point in time, given the post-canon stuff we've got. And I think I'm happy with where they stand now as characters, and having kind of Mutsumi reawaken all these other personalities, and them kind of different versions, at different times come out and help her and interact at certain times and that kind of thing. I think there's a lot of potential there, but like you said, they're at a very ambitious point right now with them as characters, and that kind of representation. It could very easily either just go down a route where it does feel a bit diluted and a bit kind of or that's it with them. But on the other side, it can kind of go on a route where it just becomes a bit messy and unclear what's going on with them. So I think they need to handle it well. Though I do have complete faith in them handling it well, knowing that the directors, it was his idea for this to happen, and this was, even though this being a last minute addition to the show, it was done very well. And knowing that he's read a thread on Twitter from someone who has the disorder and has analysed all the episodes and everything regarding Mortis, knowing that he has read that is a really positive thing going forward. And I think I do have faith in them, but I do agree that that whole kind of situation was a bit messy. It was unfortunate seeing different assumptions from the fan base and kind of assuming certain things were happening and people dooming about it. But I think they're in a good spot now, and I have faith in them to deliver on it in the future as well. And I'm kind of not expecting Mortis to get another significant character arc. It's just how they end up interacting with other characters and with each other more. That is just what I want done properly now with them. And then we have a take from Blizzard, my good friend. I think Mujica's biggest weakness is that the different character relationships feel too isolated from a larger group dynamic. Taki may have gotten shafted focus, but she has defined relationships with each other of the four members with ongoing emphasis on these. It feels a lot worse with Nyamu and Umiko because they're lacking this kind of crossover, save for a scene here and there. I definitely understand this. It kind of goes back to the fact of Mujica having kind of a fake chemistry, having a lack of chemistry. And for me, it's kind of the point that they don't have very good, very strong character relationships. I think in Mujica especially, it works well, but going forward, I don't think it can continue in that way. Which is great that we're getting a sequel. It means that they can focus on these kind of character relationships, and they can focus on aspects of the characters and the dynamics that haven't been built up in Mujica. But for me, this is a kind of that's the point deal, and that doesn't mean that you can't find it bad, because even though that is the point, I can understand that it not being compelling or wanting more interactions from them as pairs in the group and as more crossovers in the group themselves, because that is just something you kind of expect from a banned anime. You expect that from any show in general about kind of a group of characters going through something like this. Even like I said, even though I do think that is the point, and that I think it works well for Mujica in isolation, in the future it won't work. And I think it's good that we're already seeing interactions between the band members, like between Wika, Mutsumi and Yamu, and Umiri and Takiko in post-canon stuff. We're already seeing that, which is great, and it means that hopefully they will put effort into fleshing out these interactions and the dynamics a bit more, and these relationships a bit more, because they do need it if they're going to continue in the way they are. But yeah, that was a good one. Then we have MyGO is a better band and has better music than Mujica, and Saki is probably still my least favourite of the main girls. Please don't steal my kidneys, Saki cultists. Your kidneys are safe for now, until season 3 maybe takes a bit too long, then some offerings might have to be made. But I'm not going to argue about music tastes, because for me it's much less tangible than something like anime and takes regarding that. I feel like if you think MyGO has better music than Mujica, I'm in no position to kind of argue with you over that. I think Mujica have better music personally, but like I said, I'm not going to knock anyone who thinks otherwise. It depends what he means MyGO being better as a band, because I guess in a more typical sense they have much more chemistry, they have more kind of band aspects and moments to them and interactions and relationships. Mujica are completely disjointed, but like I said, that's kind of the point of Mujica. Saki being your least favourite is unfortunate, because she is probably my favourite. But again, with a cast of characters this strong, I'm not going to knock anyone for thinking one character is your favourite and one character isn't, because there is so many incredible characters in this series that I really can't fault any of them. I can't fault anyone for not liking one or the other more than the other, you know? And then we have some takes regarding Rika and the kind of incest route they took with her. Probably just lukewarm, but I did not like the direction Rika's tale took. It just made any scenes of Takiko extremely uncomfortable for me, further accentuated by how warm Kreischick's short-lived reunion felt. And then we have Ace saying, "We fuck with incest or nah?" Correct answer is yeah. Obviously this was gonna come up. It's interesting because I'm really not gonna. If anyone doesn't like that direction that they took with Rika, I can't be like, no, you're wrong, no, you don't get it, because it's such a complicated, sensitive matter that if someone doesn't like it, I'm not in a position to kind of reprimand them for that. It's a bold direction to take. I'm glad they took it because I like bold writing. I like ambitious storytelling decisions. I'm glad they took it because, it has the consequences that something like this will end up splitting the fan base like it has. It will end up causing lots of problems, and Ren commented something similar on my YouTube post as well about the incest. It was a joke, but I think it's fascinating to kind of talk about because it's not really something that we've seen done before in this kind of genre, in this kind of obviously not medium, but in this way, because it is, at the end of the day, it's a rug pull on their relationship and on a lot that has been built up regarding the two of them. And if that makes you uncomfortable, like, fair enough. Like, especially in retrospect, looking on older scenes between the two of them, it completely recontextualizes every single interaction they have. And on the other hand, that uncomfortableness can be a good thing, and obviously that is something that I feel like they intently wanted to kind of deliver on, and they want you to watch that episode 11 and then look back and think back on all the Rika and Takiko scenes and think, oh my god, what the fuck, like what has Rika been doing? This is weird, this is uncomfortable. And I think that's purposeful, but that doesn't mean that you have to like it. That doesn't, just because, I mentioned this before, just because that's the point of something doesn't mean you like it or you like the execution of it. For me, it was a huge writing decision that I initially wasn't sure on. I ended up liking it a lot. I ended up thinking it was really, I think it really added to Rika's character. But like I said, if people don't like that, as long as they're not using it to kind of push other things or mischaracterize or shit on people that are interested in that aspect, not in a fetishy way, in a normal analytical way, then that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And then we have Sleepy says, "I want you." Thank you, Sleepy. Message me tonight. And finally, we have Desmond who says, "I don't understand Saki x Tomori. I just don't feel it. It just felt very weird whenever that was happening on the screen." And this is a take I have seen. I just want to clarify that I don't think this person is like a strong Rika Saki shipper. I follow them, so you can kind of already put that theory out of the way. But I have seen this take from a couple people now, and for me, I just don't get it at all. I don't understand it at all, and I think it may be a bit of a separation from people who are super invested in the show and people who just kind of like the show. I know Desmond, he likes the show. He's not as invested in it as someone like I am. I know another person who feels the same. It was literally the person in the previous take. They kind of feel the same. I know they like the show. They don't kind of love it. But for me, I just don't. I can't understand it. I can't understand not liking this dynamic. For me, they are the heartbeat. They're the core of the show. They're what drives everyone and everything in the show to some degree. I mean, you read like almost any of the lyrics to MyGO songs, you'll find Tomori yearning over Saki in some way. Sakiko, I mean, the amount of stuff that isn't in the anime that you see from Sakiko about how she feels towards Tomori is remarkable. And I don't know. I don't get that personally. I can't fathom not liking that dynamic and that relationship. I guess if you kind of see it from an angle that you don't want them to be kind of together in a present kind of moment in like a shipping way, then fair enough. But I feel like there's so much there. There's so much interesting about them two as characters that is essential to the show and is essential to understanding them as characters too. Like I said, this is probably I feel like Tomosaki has more appeal to hardcore members of the fan base, people who rewatch the show, who watch and engage with all the stuff outside of the show. Tomosaki has kind of that kind of appeal and has that, and makes more sense the more you get into the show and the franchise. But yeah, for me, I just don't understand that at all. But that is all of them. It was good fun talking about these. I don't feel like there was too many that controversial takes. I feel like there's only so far you can take it without just completely misunderstanding the show and the characters. But everything felt quite reasonable here to a degree, and I'm glad I could discuss it kind of normally. And I'm glad that post was engaged with normally from other people as well. I had good fun with this. But yeah, I don't know how else I'll be dragging out the MyGO and Mujica content from here, but for now, that is all. I'll see you guys later. Bye.